I'm like, thank God.
Huh?
Right, let's take roll.
Mayor
Here.
Mayor Grotus,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wellman.
Here.
Counselor Hershey,
Yes.
Counselor Dem.
Here.
Counselor Stepp,
Yes.
Counselor Wuso.
Yes.
We have a quorum.
Let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the United States and to the republic
All right, next item agenda is agenda changes and conflicts. But before we get to that, I just wanted to turn it over very quickly to our city attorney for a quick PSA.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to let the public who might be online or out in the audience, who wanted to comment on the events of the last about week and a half related to the downtown market. As you know, a week ago Tuesday, there was a very serious incident at a vendor. Somebody was severely burned. That particular vendor had not been inspected by the fire marshal and had not been on the approved vendor list for that event with the organizer. City staff issued a revocation of that facility permit. Since that time, myself and the rest of staff have been working with the downtown market to come up with a set of safety protocols that could try to ensure the safety of the public as well as other vendors. And, you know, I think something that gets lost as we were talking about this is somebody did get very badly hurt. And our first responsibility is to the safety of our citizens and our visitors. And so that has been the focus as we've worked through this process. The conclusion of that was a set of an issuance of an amended permit to the downtown market that contains enhanced safety guidelines, as well as enhanced oversight that we don't normally do with a situation like this, but found necessary and appropriate to increase the kind of the level of oversight that we do, including weekly walkthroughs by the fire marshal to ensure all vendors are inspected, fire lanes are clear, those kinds of things. So we did issue that permit earlier today at the work session. A representative of the downtown market came in along with her attorney and made some comments to council. I don't think I really need to address those, and I'm not going to. But I did want to, for the public, that the market will be back open again on Tuesday, the 12th. And that there is a valid permit in place, and so they should be good to go. And then, that's for the balance of this year, and hopefully we don't have any more incidents, and we can continue to have a safe downtown market on 7th Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. All right, is there any agenda changes, conflicts for this evening?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, Paul.
Middle Colorado Watershed Council is presenting about their
Yeah.
activities. Do you want me to recuse myself at that time? Okay.
I do. We have an odd, and Mike Gamba's in the room, and so you can attest to how painful the conflicts provision in our code is. You're literally going to be out of the room while they're presenting.
Okay,
So
great.
thanks.
no problem.
Any other agenda changes or conflicts of interest? All right, seeing none, we'll have citizens appearing before council. This is for items not appearing on the agenda. And I have a sign-up sheet, so if Lori Chase would like to come up and speak for items not appearing on the agenda.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for letting me speak. And I'm a little after the fact, but I'd like to add something that I sent out.
Lori, could you
earlier
give,
today.
Lori, could you give your name?
Oh,
and
my name.
address?
Oh, yeah. I forgot it. Lori Chase. He already said it. Lori Chase, 705 Cowden Drive. And this is regarding the Tuesday market. And I'm so glad that I was glad to see that news. But I sent out this letter to a couple of 3 of the city council members. And it wasn't because I didn't want to send it out to everyone. I'm just really lazy in the morning, and whoever pops up, and I just hit those. Anyway, it says, good morning. Regarding the Tuesday market, it just seems rather odd to me that one accident would shut down the market for the entire season. Yes, I understand it was serious. A person getting burned by a leaky propane tank is a serious matter. Yes, I think it needs to be monitored more closely, but to shut down a market entirely, I just don't understand that. What's the other side of the story? Or has it, as it's been said before, what is the rest of the story? I won't be able to be at the meeting tonight, but I changed things around, so here I am. And the Tuesday market is an important community event that brings people together in our lovely old downtown. I appreciate the city trying to do events out of the community center, but it just isn't the same. It doesn't have the feel that we have or we want to have as a community. We need events that aren't necessarily produced entirely by the city. We need events presented by, I don't know, the Defiance community players, or, you know, various musicians or the Arts Council, and promote those as well. They're equally important and in this city to provide diversity and community. And that's what we need for a healthy community. We need diversity. Simple. And thank you so much, because I know you guys work really hard. I could never do it, except for being mayor, maybe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lori. Christian Hay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Christian Henney, 526 Pine Street. I have two quick asks statements for the night. The first is I would really like to ask, while we're heading into budget season, that we find a way to squeeze into the budget a drinking fountain at the dog park. Most dog parks have some sort of a drinking fountain. Maybe it needs to be down the street closer to the high school where there's water line, but I'd like to make that ask. The second thing is I want to thank Deborah Figueroa for her leadership, the great job she's done in building an amazing city leadership team, and we're going to miss you.
You're here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christian. Is there anybody else? Anybody else online, Alyssa? Nope. Okay. The next item is such proclamation honoring City Manager Deborah Figueroa. So, Ms. Figueroa, you need to come up and stand underneath the microphone so everybody can hear. Nope, nope. That's one of those times. Doesn't work that way. Okay. You had to wear your heels, huh?
I did.
Whereas Deborah Figueroa was appointed city manager for the city of Glenwood Springs in 2016 by some very wise people. Whereas Ms. Figueroa has been pivotal in moving our community forward through efficient and responsive city government, preservation and improvement of infrastructure, protection and preservation of quality of life, generation of sustainable economic development, and by ensuring public safety. And whereas the city has completed many significant public safety and infrastructure improvements under her tenure, including the Grand Avenue Bridge project, establishment of community broadband fiber, construction of the West Midland Trail, replacement of the 27th Street Bridge, enhancements of shoreline to two rivers and Veltus Park, reconstruction of South Midland, completion of the 8th Street connection, transition to 100% renewable electric energy and water infrastructure improvements. And whereas Ms. Figueroa has led Glenwood Springs through numerous emergency events, including the largest planned detour in U.S. history, as CDOT replaced the Grand Avenue Bridge, Lake Christine Fire, the COVID-19 pandemic, the Grizzly Creek Fire, debris flows, and interstate closures. And whereas the community has made significant progress on South Bridge project, bringing the project to 100% design and a strong application for federal funding through her tireless resolve. And whereas Ms. Figueroa has cultivated a strong city staff and fostered a safe, supportive, and professional working environment. And whereas the dedicated service of Ms. Figueroa has positioned Glenwood Springs for a resilient future and has made significant positive impacts on the community throughout her exceptional leadership and guidance of our city. And whereas this proclamation, it keeps going, guys. Whereas this proclamation represents just a small fraction of the work, value, and inspiration you brought to the city council, staff, and the community. Whereas this council is unanimous in our appreciation, support, and admiration of you. Whereas sustainable strategy sucks. Remember that. We're taking you away from us. But we are happy for you because you are happy. Whereas you have sacrificed and given so much, the council wanted to express our gratitude by allowing you a chance to sip.
It's over here, sorry.
On your favorite spirit. And whereas Your husband Dylan and your family also deserves our gratitude. It's supporting you. And it's awesome. Turn a bottle.
You think these will be around?
But once for him. And whereas we will miss your leadership, kindness, humor, and vision. And we are lucky to keep you as a resident of this community. Therefore, be it resolved that I, Jonathan Godis, Mayor of Glenwood Springs, the state of Colorado, do hereby recognize and express our sincere appreciation to City Manager Deborah Figueroa for her long-standing commitment to serving our community.
Thank you all. Thank you all very much. It's been a really fun 6 years. Thank you for hiring me and fundamentally changing my life. Thank you for all the help over the years. Thank you, senior staff, for being the best staff anybody could ever ask for. I'm gonna miss you all, but I'm going to be here. So please come by and see me.
We don't necessarily have to open this up to public comment, but would anybody like to give public comment? Steve?
Happy?
Yeah.
I can't come here without commenting. All right, you want my name?
Please.
And your address.
No, you don't want that. Okay, Catherine Prager Taggart. And I am currently a resident of Rifle, sorry. But I just wanted to say thank you, Deborah. You know, it was an interesting process hiring you. But we made the best choice, without a doubt. And I just thank you for your service. So, and wishing you all the best, whatever, even if it is with sustainable strategy. But we did have fun in Washington.
We did.
So, okay, anyway, thank you. Thank you.
All right, anybody else? Okay, we'll put it to bed. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
All right. Citizens of period, I've already did that, proclamation, consent agenda, is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Been moved by Counselor Willman, seconded by Counselor Dem. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, planning item number 15, 20 or 1222 code amendments to title 070040 as relates to floodplain regulations. Are we continuing this?
I was gonna. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I moved to continue this item till when? Oh, sorry.
Next regular meeting.
Oh, so the next regular meeting, which is the 21st.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you.
Been moved by Counselor
Hershey, I mean.
did you do it?
Willman.
Yeah, sorry, I thought Hershey did it. Seconded by Counselor Hershey. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We're running through this ordinance number 2022-18 code amendment to 060 and 070 related to hotel conversion.
Hotel conversions.
I was asked by people if there's a possibility when someone's at the podium, could we have their picture or the camera on them? Is that possible?
She can do
You
that.
can? Okay, that's, yeah, that's great.
Problem solved. Thank you, Ingrid.
All of this.
Deborah, don't open that now.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'm here to present ordinance 18-2022 and planning item 19-22. I just want to provide a little bit of context to why we're bringing this code change to you. We've been talking to you a lot about affordable housing and probably at every meeting for the last several months. Staff believes that our region is at a critical point regarding housing. And part of the reason we are bringing these proposed regulations to you is because of that need. There was last week, the Ad Hoc Housing Coalition hosted a group of business and other anchor institution leaders at Mortgage Commons. And this is kind of the list of bullets that came out of that meeting about the concerns related to skyrocketing housing costs. So it's an inability to hire, from construction laborers to senior engineers and attorneys, losing existing staff, inability to reliably schedule staff due to long commutes, businesses leaving the area, increasing costs to compensate for housing costs, and taking significant measures as individual businesses to find housing for staff. So those are kind of all of the impacts. This is just one piece of what I imagine will be a whole suite of changes that we propose to make in the future. We did receive a grant to do some evaluation of our existing practices and look for other ways to move the needle in terms of housing. And we've done a lot, and you heard from Hannah Klausman earlier this year about that. And we anticipate that there will be a whole number of other changes that we make in the code. So this is just one piece of the puzzle. Did want to just highlight, we, in advance of the comprehensive plan process, had a community survey with about 100 questions on that survey. And affordable housing certainly rose to the top in terms of top issues and priorities and problems that we should address in the next 3 years. And that leads me to the proposed code amendments. So a code amendment is a legislative decision by City Council. Planning Commission is a recommending body to City Council for changes in Title 70. This ordinance also includes a change in Title 60. Planning Commission held a public hearing on the proposed code changes quite recently. This is sort of on the fast track. So, you know, we see it as really important. So they heard it in the meeting in June, at the very end of June, and we got it on this first meeting in July. So I think you should hear that as us seeing this as very vitally important to addressing affordable housing. So the first piece of what we're proposing is a change to the code that would create a new use for extended stay hotels. It would create an exemption for extended stay hotels that were previously another lodging use from the requirement to provide the additional number of parking stalls that would be required by the code today when the existing footprint of the structure does not change and when the hotel is proximate to transit. And there's a definition that we're referencing in the code, 750 feet from an active transit stop. And when the number of units doesn't increase from the previous number of rooms. Additionally, there would be some other changes. The non-conforming section of the code requires upgrades to landscaping and upgrades to the number of minimum parking stalls when certain pieces of the puzzle are implicated. So landscaping is required when there's an increase in the vehicular use area, and meeting that minimum parking stall requirement happens when there's remodeling of the structure that would cost more than 50% of the current assessed value. So those changes to the non-conforming section, there's a couple of them. It all balances out to address existing parking that's on site. This proposal would also create a new commercial use category with requirements regarding kitchenettes, bathrooms, and clothes washing facilities on site. Staff is proposing that these extended stay hotels would have rental agreements where there's a deed restriction requiring 20% of the units to be leased, an average of 80% AMI. And there's also a proposal to, and this is the piece that's in Title 60, a short delay of the installation of fire suppression sprinkler systems for 90 days when the water service is sufficient for the fire system. And also it would provide for the building official to give another 90-day extension. And then another path. So that is one piece, that's a commercial strategy to addressing these conversion of these older style hotels. It wouldn't limit it to just those kind of older motor court hotels. It could be hotels with a banner. We anticipate that this would primarily be used for kind of the older style hotels. But we have had questions from developers over time that at least one where it is a banner or a flagged hotel in town. The other piece would be hotel conversion. So there's this commercial strategy, then there's this multifamily residential strategy where the hotel would actually convert to multifamily residential. Essentially what the proposal is to kind of change the process. So today, most of these hotels that would want to convert to kind of a more longer term stay for people to live in them are probably more than 24 units. So 25 units or more today would require both a hearing before Planning Commission and a hearing before City Council. What we're proposing is to make these, we still think it deserves a public hearing, but to have Planning Commission be the deciding body. Because essentially these are in the built environment. The impacts of the neighborhood probably are limited. It would still have a public hearing. People would still be able to come. There would still be noticing, but it wouldn't require 2 public hearings. It would create a final plans exemption for hotel conversions when the footprint doesn't change. Staff would recommend these projects best following the major site architectural consideration at Planning Commission and upon signature of the development agreement. So essentially, again, that's kind of a process piece. The final plans is also a land use planning permit. And essentially, these are in the built environment. There's probably limited changes that are happening actually to the site. And so we're proposing to eliminate that step. And so you're not losing anything because any concerns that there would be in terms of engineering or other site considerations could be dealt with at the building permit. It basically shortens the time period. And we're also proposing an exemption from the common open space requirement due to these sites generally being kind of built out to their entirety. It would be very difficult for developers to be able to meet that requirement without a tear down. So here's kind of the comparison of the two. So the extended stay hotel commercial classification would require kitchenettes, washer dryer facilities to be available on site, at least a 3/4 bathroom within the units. Kitchenettes would have to have a built-in cooktop and a sink. So a sink that's separate from the bathroom sink. Stays not longer than 180 days unless the contract is with a government or quasi-governmental entity, would require certain lighting requirements and would prohibit recreational vehicles and trailers in the parking lots. That's something that came out of the Planning Commission, a couple of additional requirements that Planning Commission wanted to have. They weren't so specific to say this is exactly what we're looking for, but wanted to have more input from staff related to safety. And those are the things that we added. And lighting requirements and doors. I will say that after Planning Commission, I did drive all of these hotels in town and they are very well lit. Actually better lit than I anticipated both the doors and the parking lots to be. This planning application would not be required because the use would be commercial to a commercial change of use. So it would be a building permit application for remodeling. Average time for building permit is 6 to 8 weeks. It might be a little bit longer today because we are short a building permit tech, but hopefully we're getting back to that. And our ideal target is 4 to 6 weeks. Stays for commercial. Oh, so it would stay commercial in terms of system improvement fees. So there wouldn't be a payment for school land dedication. There wouldn't be a payment for parkland dedication because they would stay in the commercial category. Deed restriction of 20% units at 80% AMI, exemption from that additional parking and those other changes related to parking lots. The other path is the residential path. So a full conversion to multifamily residential would be a residential classification, would have to meet all the requirements other than the open space requirement. And essentially the rest of the changes are related to kind of process. I have this, it's included in your packet, but we can certainly come back and refer to it. It just is the CHAFA income limits related to those AMI categories. And then Title 70 code changes require that you consider whether and to what extent the changes are consistent with the comprehensive plan and other city policies, and that they address a demonstrated community need They're necessary to respond to substantial changes in conditions in our policy, and they're consistent with the general purpose. And with that, this is a public hearing. I'm open to any questions that you have, and I know that there are some folks in the audience who may provide some additional testimony.
Go ahead, Paula.
I had a few questions here, Jen, sorry. The 750 feet, is that, what was that picked off of? I'm just kind of thinking of South Glenwood. There are some hotels out there if they should choose to convert. I know kind of roughly what it is on Highway 6. I'm just curious why 750 and what happens if the transit authority or whatever moves that from where it is currently?
So that's a requirement that's in the, or not a requirement, but it's a consideration that's in the parking section today. So we allow for administrative reduction in the parking when the proposed development is within 750 feet of an active transit stop. And I think in general, mostly those bus stops stay because changes to the overall system and anything that you tweak has an implication for the rest of the system. That's not to say that there might not be changes, but we wouldn't come back and make them provide parking unless you added that as a requirement. But I wouldn't anticipate that we would do that.
But you could also, if they were 800 feet, you could waive, or you could, the P and Z commission could do something to give them some flexibility.
I think if they were outside of that 750 feet, they would have to comply with the other pieces. So,
Okay.
We are looking for the parking lot changes to stay in place. So the existing parking that's there today works for these kind of uses today. We don't know, but we suspect that some of these hotels probably do have folks who are staying longer than 29-day stays. But they're probably 29-day kind of contracts over, or weekly
Right.
contracts over and over and over again. So, I mean, I guess the point is that it's if they were outside of that 750 feet, that they would have to comply with the rest of the code. It's intended to kind of
Give
solve
some
for the park, kind of it's an offset really is the parking.
Okay. And the lighting at I know it mentioned lighting at doors. Can we, and you said that everything is well lit when you did your tour, but can we require that the parking areas are well lit as well? Just again, thinking that kind of danger kind of.
We certainly could. We don't have other places in the code where there's a minimum standard for lighting. And this would be kind of the first entree into that. I know that we, as an overall kind of philosophy and related to the code, have a thought toward the dark sky. And so I think that's why there's not a minimum standard. Other codes that I'm familiar with do have a minimum standard. We certainly could add it as a requirement. Again, I think they're fairly well lit today. Honestly, they were much better lit than I anticipated. I hadn't had the opportunity to drive through all the parking lots before the planning commission the other night. I thought that I would have felt safe.
I'm just thinking long-term, 5 years down the road, people don't care as much and the lights go out and who's responsible to replace a street light? I mean, a lamp light, that kind of thing. That's what I'm thinking.
My understanding is that there aren't other lighting requirements or requirements for kind of stairways and corridors in the building code. I don't think there are parking
Okay.
lot requirements. We certainly could add some if you wanted to.
If we're looking at future adjustments in code or something, I feel like that's important. And then my last question was, most of these hotels, don't they have fire suppression? I'm kind of a little confused on why they have to then do fire suppression if they've already got fire suppression.
A lot of these hotels were probably constructed in a time when it wasn't a requirement.
Okay.
And so, with the exception of some of those bannered hotels that probably do have fire suppression, we've only had one developer come and ask a question about a bannered hotel to convert to multifamily residential. So the bulk of these are hotels that currently do not have fire suppression.
All right. Thank you.
Go ahead, Ingrid.
Okay. My
you wanna
question was, will you
Okay.
clarify, you mentioned 50% of assessed value and improvements. Will you touch on that again? That if I look at assessed value for these commercial properties, I think if you changed one toilet out, you'd probably hit half, like 50%. So
it is a requirement today. In the non-conforming parking section, it's actually in here a couple of times. We're actually just proposing to take it out once. But a remodeling of one or more structures that over a 2-year period will cost more than 50% of the current assessed value of the structures would require an upgrade to the parking. So.
Okay, so you would take that out is what
And
you're
I'm
saying.
And I'm saying that and we would be taking this out for everybody, so it
Great.
wouldn't just affect
Great.
these hotel conversions, but we think
In
certainly that
particular.
would be certainly that these folks would, if they were trying to develop a motel into either category, that would probably be implicated, that
Yeah.
they would have to make those changes. So.
They would have to, just to give you guys an example, I looked one of the hotels out in West Glenwood up and the assessed value is like $240,000. So, that's a very nominal amount of money that would, prompt this change. So I think it's a great move. Thank you for looking into this and the Planning and Zoning Commission in particular, just like digging deep on this as well.
Charlie?
So one question, I probably know the answer, but I want to ask you to make sure I understand it. When the multifamily one on the, not requiring 20% of the units, but it's inclusionary, so that's in that same, they have so many units, they have to provide so much affordable housing, is that right?
So we're not proposing any changes that would be different over and above for the conversion to multifamily residential. It's primarily process. So if there were changes, and there may be other changes that are proposed related to inclusionary zoning, if that were to change, then it would also affect these properties.
So maybe I didn't ask my question right. Do they have to provide affordable units in the multifamily category?
If they're over 10.
Okay.
So I think
That's what I thought.
there probably are very few. This also, and I failed to mention that the definition that we've included in the code would be for those units that are 6 units and over. And so in that 6 to 9, I don't know how many hotels there are that would probably be in this category. So I would say that yes, they would have to.
So I think it's important, even in that conversion, that we have this. Okay.
Any other questions for staff?
Tony's got his light on.
No, I'm good. My light's just on. Forgot to turn it on.
Anybody from the public like to comment?
Good evening. How you doing? My name is Mike Herbs. I'm with Roaring Fork Transportation Authority, Director of Facilities and Capital Projects. And, I'd like to talk tonight about supporting this amendment. We're behind this. As you all know, RAFTA has struggled to meet our hiring requirements for the bus service. We're 40 drivers short, 8 mechanics, and half a dozen, administrative people short at the moment, and just struggling to get anybody to come to the Valley. We cut service by 13% this summer, and if we don't meet our hiring quota, it could be the same this winter, which is not going to be good for us, or anybody else in the Valley. RAFTA is currently looking at a hotel right now to do this very thing, to convert it to employee housing. We've got a contract today on it, actually, so we're moving forward. And our part of that is the due diligence on how we can make this thing work. And the parking requirement is a big deal for us. Our engineers right now are not optimistic we can meet the current code. Be about another 30 parking spots on the site. And most of these hotels and the properties are paved, corner to corner. There's really not a lot of room left. And trying to meet that would just probably be very difficult for us, and we might not be able to do it. So hopefully we can, get this project going on our side and, get some employees in here for the fall and winter season. But those code changes would work well for us and really make this thing a lot better and more profitable, or not profitable, but more doable. We're not making any money on this one, trust me. So, that's pretty much what we have for this today. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I don't think so.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
so
Thank you.
thank you.
Anybody else like to comment from the public? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Lee Touchbarber. I'm the CEO of Renew Roaring Fork Senior Living. And I just want to say that I heard about this initiative moving forward just a few weeks ago. And I quickly was sort of inspired to start attending these meetings. The reason being is because that's twofold. One is there is a huge need nationally as well as locally here for affordable senior living. Assisted living and memory care is extraordinarily expensive, whether you go to Denver or you do it here somewhere in the Roaring Fork Valley. It can be $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a month or more. And so that knocks a lot of people who need assisted living and memory care out of the marketplace. They really have nowhere to go. And so there's a conundrum in the senior living industry of what is the solution? Probably the most innovative and interesting approach is taking a pre-existing building that has a lot of the sort of pieces necessary to for people to reside in the building, like hotels, and enable some sort of conversion. To build something new in today's world is extraordinarily expensive. Everybody here probably knows labor, materials are really, really high. And so it's cost prohibitive, and it just isn't, the economic structure just totally breaks down with that in mind. So I think it's really progressive that this is being considered here. I know a lot of other communities that need this, and this same concept is percolating. I think as time goes by, this will be realized in a lot of different municipalities in Colorado and beyond. The second reason I think this is great is the workforce housing crisis. It's interesting because a lot of people reference it as a crisis, and I don't think that that is the wrong use of words. As this community continues to grow and prosper, what I see from my standpoint is a lot of retirees are sort of in-migrate from other parts of the country. And as sort of that demographic grows, the workforce that's necessary to sort of provide the services, whether it's hospitality, restaurants, healthcare, et cetera, needs to figure out how to also reside in the community. The rent here is really expensive, and so relative to income, there's an imbalance there. And so for workforce housing, I think there needs to be a solution. It would be great. This provides some immediacy because the building is already erected. Again, developing something new takes a lot of time, is very costly, and oftentimes the economics don't work out. So this is kind of a cool approach in that respect. So there you go.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else like to comment? Okay, I'll bring it back now. We'll close public hearing for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
you said it first.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to make a motion of approval in ordinance 2022-18 code amendments to title 060 and 070 related to hotel conversions. And there are no findings on this one. This is just an ordinance. So
They're actually in order.
they're incorporated into the ordinance. Yeah.
Second.
It's been moved by Counselor Russo, seconded by Counselor Dame. Ryan, let's call the question.
It's unanimous.
Happy birthday, Deborah.
It's unanimous.
I wanted to abstain.
All right, item number 18, update on Middle Colorado Watershed.
You have to go.
Oh, 17, sorry. Built for Zero homeless update.
I was gonna say, you can't.
Your dad will just go
I can't.
And they may not be, all be here yet.
So number 18, I was right.
They're out
Up, okay.
Look at that, the hardest working counselor in showbiz.
While we're waiting, may I ask a follow-up question to Jen quick about the last item?
It's closed.
Okay.
No, I'm joking. Go ahead. We got time.
Hey, Jen, can I ask you something about this housing conversion thing? I'm just trying to figure out how to incentivize our voluntary affordable housing program since we don't have any fees to give. Is that something we should look at? Or because if somebody wants to do more than the 20% or whatever unit is required, wouldn't it be great if we can get it?
We will have to put some thought into it. I don't know that
Okay.
I have an answer right off the top
I
of
just-
my head. Sometimes I do, but in this case, I do not.
I know, I was thinking about it while we were voting and I'm like, okay.
She's still relaying.
Very quick.
All good. I just want to throw it out. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you. All right, Debbie, you're up.
Where's Ryan? Who's my clock, Ryan?
Oh, good. Did you want?
Still suck.
You said I had 55 minutes, but was that right?
I said 55 seconds.
Oh, second.
You have as much time as you need, Ms. Slavin.
No. Hey, thanks for the chance to be here tonight, doing a very abbreviated overview of the progress that we've been working on in creating a more collective, collaborative, and resource response to homelessness and housing stability. We're going to present on that. Christina Gare, I'm not sure if she is online. If anybody can help me not, because we're trying to figure out this time here with the director of West Mountain Regional Health Alliance, been very involved, and the Built for Zero coordinator, Michelle Skagen, is here with me. We're going to share a quick look at the structure or system now in place, both locally and regionally, addressing this issue, the resources that have been accessed, coordinated, and created, the people who are now in place to sustain this work, and the important role of the city moving forward. I'm gonna let you take over. Oh, let's see, we'll go one slide. Let me do this one here still. Yeah, conversations around this began 2019, if you can believe that. That's it. So thank you from me for the opportunity to be involved in all of that and just set out and about. I've sent you a little brief ahead of time in your packet. We had a lot of questions then. We've got some answers for you tonight, so I'm excited about that. Glenwood Springs recognized the issue and began to address it in partnership with other organizations. And then we participated in that regional Built for Zero initiative, which is a methodology nationally, and now Colorado has adopted that as a state way to address the issue of homelessness, because that's a way that works, methodology that works. And Glenwood Springs has formed a coalition now called the Housing Stability Coalition, which really will show you a little bit more how that works, but citizen engagement and a way to bring our community together with that. So the folks you saw come in tonight, Joseph, you're even on that list. Jen, you're on that list. All of you that are on that list, raise your hand, stand up. Christian is even on this. So there's 140 people between the education pieces we've done and all that are on that network piece now, that are engaged in some fashion or way and have expressed that they want to be informed or involved with this issue. So interesting piece of info.
Thank you, Debbie. And so I'm Michelle Scoggin. I am the Built for Zero coordinator with West Mountain Regional Health Alliance. And I'm sort of filling in for Christina. She had a transportation snafu tonight, so I'll be representing her. So Debbie briefly went over where were we having those conversations. And I will add that where we were was not really understanding the problem. And it's until we understand the problem that we can come up with viable solutions. So where are we now? We've made a lot of progress. We've identified a lot of individuals in the community who are experiencing homelessness. a lot of people were able to access emergency shelter over the winter months and establish stability so that they could move to the next step, many of whom have accessed permanent housing because of the stability that emergency shelter provided. And as of July 1st, the Garfield Housing Authority housed 5 people, and they continue to serve people with vouchers. But it requires a lot of collaboration. And of course, this Built for Zero framework, which is rooted in data and it's rooted in interagency coordination and collaboration. So a big piece is the data. And it's really what helps us understand who is experiencing homelessness, why are they experiencing homelessness, and what are the barriers that prevent people from accessing housing stability. So you can see, I don't need to read through all the statistics here. I do want to point out the chronicity piece, chronically homeless. So the HUD definition of chronic homelessness is that someone is experiencing homelessness for at least a year and they have a disabling condition. So when you're in a community and you see visible homelessness, that's typically because somebody is experiencing chronic homelessness. Most of the people on this list are likely not in the street, but the people who are experiencing chronic homelessness typically are. That's where we get the myths. That's where we establish assumptions. And it's where, and that's really what indicates a gap in services. The other thing that the data is telling us right now is that more families are entering homelessness and more seniors because of fixed incomes. And of course, we all know we're being impacted by the cost of food and housing. Some other statistics that we just want to highlight that, so since our peer specialists that you helped hire through your partnership with West Mountain, our street outreach had up to until June had 407 engagements. Now that list keeps growing, but since October, there have been 400 documented engagements with clients, which is astounding. There were 2,000 nights of shelter provided. So 2,000 nights that local clients used in emergency shelter. And like I said, many people were able to move to some kind of housing stability through that process. And what it cost to put people in hotels, since we don't have a viable congregate shelter, was $271,608. And so the question is that the most sustainable use of funds, or do we need to be thinking about a different way to provide emergency or temporary shelter? Another thing that the data really highlights are the causes and barriers of homelessness. And because we administer assessments and people come together in case conferencing to understand what has led to these circumstances, we really understand there are some causes that go back to adverse childhood experiences. And then there are barriers in place that are really hard. A lot of them are system barriers. And so understanding those things can help inform the types of programs and services that we want to offer in our community to prevent homelessness. So this is an ideal continuum. This was created by a consultant we've been working with to help us build a more comprehensive system. Really, you can see some of our agencies are listed here. It doesn't reflect everyone who's represented in our weekly case conferences. But ultimately, this is the continuum where someone enters homelessness and they hopefully move through fairly quickly. But the system only works if every part of that continuum is well-resourced financially and with adequate services. And the system only works if you see the arrows going up and down. At the bottom, we have the Housing Stability Coalition collaborating with city officials and, informing and exchanging information. And then all of these agencies working together, coordinating to figure out where a client needs to be served. So this continuum works really well if all of those gaps are filled in. And when we see visible homelessness with chronicity, with people experiencing chronic homelessness, that really points to we don't have permanent supportive housing and we have very little affordable housing. So hopefully and right now we're actively trying to build a system that's regional that can address all of the gaps in our system. I do want to point out another, the money that you all that went after for the ESG CV2 funds allowed us to hire Jose Saez, who's in our audience tonight. He is our peer specialist through Mind Springs Health. And so he gets supervision through Mind Springs, and then he collaborates on a regular basis with all of the agencies in the area. I don't think that we would understand our problem and start to come up with solutions without the hard work that Jose has provided. So we just want to thank you for that and for the incredible engagement and relationship building. He builds trust so that he can assess clients, so that we can understand the data and the circumstances. And he's been an incredible collaborator with a lot of our partners. So kudos to Jose. And then we're getting a lot of acknowledgement through, locally through Catholic Charities, the HUD-VASH program. John Westrup is the social worker over there. And then up to the state. The state is really starting to see us work together and break down our silos to create a collaborative system. So you can read these quotes and we can put them up later if you'd like to see them. And then finally, we're just excited to see how far we've come. I've only been in the system since 2021. I didn't know any of the acronyms. And now just over a year's time, it's been incredible to go from like, what is built for zero or built to zero? And what are these things? And, how do you define homelessness, to now we're really starting to understand the problem. But it doesn't stop here. We still have a lot of work to do. And I'm going to hand it to you, Debbie.
Well, we have now, and just to wrap that up really quickly, that we've tried to show you in a very quick time, is we have a system. When I started out, and as I had shared with you, my goals being to find a system and build a structure that's sustainable, because without that, right, this doesn't happen. And we have momentum, and we certainly have people who know what we have, best practices, we have connections, both locally, regionally, across the country, and your support has been imperative, and it will continue to be. But I really want to leave you with a confidence that, understanding what it is that we're dealing with is really, as Michelle had said, the beginning of the solution. So thank you for all your pieces and parts and help with that. And we're open for questions.
Any questions?
I have a couple questions. So at one point you mentioned the number of engagements. What exactly qualifies or constitutes an engagement?
I can't necessarily speak for what exactly goes on, but it means that somebody, let's say Jose is walking around town, he sees somebody who seems to be experiencing homelessness, and it's a conversation, or it could be that someone's trying to access services either through Salvation Army or Catholic Charities. And those interagency communications allow someone to start engaging with that client, asking questions, building relationships. But what you really want is someone who has the empathy and the understanding to build it in a way that's not threatening, when people have already not trusted a system. So yeah, but every time if there's paperwork or checking in on how paperwork is going, or applying for Social Security, or trying to get ID, those are all considered engagements.
Okay, perfect. And then one other question, and that is, how are you guys as far as support for the Latino community, or even just the bilingual community, those who English is not their primary?
Sure. I mean, we certainly have we have undocumented people on our by name list, and we have people who are Spanish speaking. I would say, and I don't have exact statistics, but it's sometimes harder to do that identification piece. And so we are really trying to build more relationships with organizations who do work with second language learner or people who whose English is their second language. And what's been really impressive, just working with Catholic Charities, is that there are housing projects in our community that serve undocumented people on a sliding scale. So there certainly are people willing to help, but we could do better.
Okay,
I
that's
think
great.
that between Jose with outreach, and then even in case conferencing and with other services, there's opportunity for language. Yeah.
Okay.
That language is not a barrier as far as communication.
Great, that's
Yeah.
perfect. And then one last question, sorry for the multi questions this evening, but the 271,000, you mentioned October to March, is that for that period or? Okay.
Winter, yeah,
Thank you.
winter
Okay.
shelter.
Thanks, ladies.
Other shelter done.
I-
And that's the last pieces that I think that if you focused on what would that be helpful with funding and resources is maintaining that street outreach, right? I mean, because that was what important. We're soon going to wait for homeless people to come to us to understand if they're there. Ensure that we have that Built for Zero coordinator position because it's the coordination of all that. Many of the things you see on there were services that already exist, but you know, people bouncing in and out. And so being able to sew that all together, huge. And then work together on affordable housing and shelter options, which we know are on your list too.
And permanent supportive housing.
And permanent supportive housing, yeah.
In the statistics of the breakdown of who's homeless, that mentioned, I think 22 families. The 22 families didn't break out the youth into the 6 youth. That's multiple people in that group, right?
Right,
So
yes.
probably what, 50 to 75 people included in 22 families? Just multiplying that out in my head.
Yeah, I can't do the math on my feet like this, but there was an initial number and then the total number reflected, there was a total number at the bottom, but that was the breakout of families. So family of 3, family of 4, family.
Okay.
And then the youth were separate and that by HUD definition, that's anyone 24 or younger or between 18 and 24
That's on their own.
Yep.
And homeless.
and unaccompanied. Yeah.
Right. So a single adult is above 24, which was 170 or something like that. Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much, guys. We really appreciate you coming out. We appreciate the update and all the work you guys are doing. It's fantastic.
And thank you. We couldn't do it without you. So.
Thanks.
Yay to that great city manager who really got us going on this and supported that. Hooray.
Yeah,
Thank
we'd like to give her a raise,
I
but
know,
oh well.
I know.
And thank you for everyone in the audience that showed up in
And
support of
thank
us.
you, Sharon.
Great team.
Bonus on the 15th.
That's
All
for the party.
All right, next is the update on the Middle Colorado Watershed.
Middle, and for the record,
Yes,
Mr. Mayor, Miss.
Counselor Steph has left
Counselor
the
Steph has
building
left the-
because of a conflict of
Yes.
potential conflict of interest. Yes, sir.
And I have a USB drive as well. I'm Doug Winter with Middle Colorado Watershed Council. Can I just plug this guy in? Thanks so much.
Thank you, Debbie. Sorry to interrupt. Middle Colorado.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Doug Winter. I'm on the Board of Directors for the Middle Colorado Watershed Council, and I'm here this evening to give you an update on all of the things that we've been up to. Actually, just a fraction of the things we've been up to in the area that we serve, which is from Glenwood Canyon to Tibet Canyon. And a lot of our work has actually been in the Glenwood Springs area recently because of the fire, which you have heard about probably a lot at this point. The firework that we've been doing has been balanced with other projects that we've undertaken through our integrated water management plan, or IWMP. This was an incredibly involved, community-based collaborative process. We worked with 65 stakeholders, including the city, to come up with a long list of projects basically throughout the area we work in everything from riparian habitat to aquatic species to recreation to water quality. And out of this process, we came up with a list of several dozen projects, which we've started working on and is kind of our guiding list of projects for the next several years. And we balance this project work with some ongoing programs, outreach and education, events, and things like that. And so, as I mentioned recently, a lot of our work has been in relation to the Grizzly Creek fire. And a lot of that has to do with the impacts to water quality, which are very pertinent to the city since the water, one critical source of water comes from an area that was partially burned. And so that, that's been something that we've been focused on as residents of Glenwood, as a city, and as a watershed council, because it's one of these big disturbing events, basically. So the whole process basically kicked off after the fires. We had a few months of determining who the critical stakeholders were: the Forest Service, the city, the Watershed Council, other nonprofits. And it turns out the USGS and a couple of scientific groups are interested in studying the fire as well. So essentially, the partners in the Colorado River District as well. So essentially, we acquired funding to establish water quality monitoring in the water from the burn area all the way downstream to Debec. And then also the precipitation gauges, which the Weather Service has been using to forecast closures of the bike path or even the canyon when we have potential flash flooding conditions. So Middle Colorado Watershed Council was instrumental in kind of collaborating between the agencies because everyone has their lane essentially, and the Watershed Council's job is to serve connections between everyone working in their lane. And it's been really gratifying to us because I think we've got a lot more exposure to the community than we had before, and also a lot of really good partnerships with some of these entities that we're working with. And ultimately, I think our work has been really successful. I think I have a slide here on flooding and debris flows. We've been able to mitigate a lot of the potential impacts from the fire. And a lot of that's because of the work that the city did with the water intakes in Grizzly and No Name and the infrastructure improvements. But I think a lot of that's because we have a good handle on when sediment has been coming down the river. You see these pictures of these massive debris flows and you drive through the canyon, you can picture the amount of sediment that was washed out during these debris flow events. The fact that we're able to give advance warning to water users, including through our dashboard tool, which I'll show later, the fact that we've been able to give that advance warning has really helped people reduce the wear and tear on their pumps, on their infrastructure, and provide, the same high quality water that we all get, but with potentially lower operating issues. So, that's a win for everyone, I think. And again, it's given MCWC a lot of exposure to a lot of stakeholders in the community. Additional funding. Also, we've been, I had another slide on some of these debris flows. The picture in Blue Gulch reminds me of something I heard from a CDOT representative. We gave a informative hike up Grizzly Creek a couple of weeks ago. And the CDOT representative was telling us how there's a 50-foot deep bomb hole at the bottom of a pour over at the top of Blue Gulch. So you can see the incised channels there. There's also all of these really impressive erosional features throughout the canyon. So to the next steps, basically, where is the Watershed Council going? What are the remaining needs surrounding the Grizzly Creek fire and how we're dealing with it in the coming years? I think one of the critical things is that there are some aspects of the canyon rest areas and signage that we want to update to let people know how things look, why things look the way they do, basically to inform people about the unique sense of place. City of Glenwood has a lot of people traveling from all over who are stopping, wanting to learn more about where they're at. And a lot of people who live here who recreate on the bike path or on the river corridor who are curious about the impacts of the fires and also just, the other unique aspects of our natural setting here. This project in particular, the Glenwood Canyon Wayfinding and Interpretive Sign Replacement Project, has been kind of our main push with the Glenwood Canyon Restoration Alliance, which is, at least in my experience, a really unique kind of collaborative thing to solve a specific problem. It's a group, with Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers, Middle Colorado Watershed Council, and City of Glenwood as kind of the key stakeholders. And again, a unique partnership. And this is something that we're doing kind of under that partnership to really improve some of the amenities around here. Another key focus mentioned earlier recently has been these dashboards that the cities are using, starting to use to monitor things like in this slide, turbidity, which is a measure of how much sediment is in the water, suspended sediment is in the water, basically. And I'm told that the city of Glenwood is an avid user of the dashboard. There's a lot of different water quality information that can be plotted spatially and over time. And these things, similar to the last presentation, you have to have the data to understand the problem, to understand and forecast how you're going to respond to it. These things, the water quality monitoring and the soil moisture monitors and the rain gauges kind of all fit together to make a bigger picture of incoming precip and outgoing water quality. And we're getting a really good handle on it. And I mentioned previously, some scientific groups have taken interest in studying this phenomena. So we're really kind of on the cutting edge here. And of course, these issues will continue to remain. I think about the Grizzly Creek fire as an event that has sort of tapering repercussions. Knock on wood, we won't have as much to deal with in the future as we have in the past. But I think the critical thing with some of the work we've been doing recently is preparing for the next event and understanding how our watershed responds to fire in general, or how, significant impacts to the stream impacted downstream users. So going into the future, we're looking at sort of phase 2 funding to understand, the conditions that cause detrimental water quality. And that could be for, I've been talking about water intakes for municipal use, but that's also boating and fishing, which are, significant uses of the river here, and non-municipal water use for, primarily agriculture. The key point here is applying what we've learned for the next disaster. It's something in the future, and we want to be prepared for that. So the fire focus has been, a big part of the work we've been doing. There are some other projects here and there, primarily outside the city of Glenwood proper, like we're putting a new boat ramp in down at the Silt Preserve. We're doing some work at the Silt Preserve. Those projects are generally ongoing, as well as our sort of outreach and educational programs. The key there, I think, has been progress on our river stop facility, which is at the Rifle Rest area. There's the Lions Pond. There's one building that's the bathrooms. The other building is formerly Chamber of Commerce Information Center. And for the last few years has been Middle Colorado Watershed Council sort of meeting space, interpretive center, education space. And we finished construction right at the start of COVID. And I think did a really admirable job adapting to that, having Colorado Parks and Wildlife continue to do programming outdoors there during COVID. And we really kept it up, but we're looking to expand that as part of our efforts to make River Stop open more and more of a destination for students and for people traveling through the area. We hired another contractor this winter who's been spending a lot of time on actually being in the space, and also making plans and connections with people to get more volunteers, again, so that we can have more interaction with the community. These photos on the screen are of some of the exhibits that we finished. It's a really cool space, and I hope to see you guys there sometime. So with that, do you guys have any questions on water quality impacts from fire, water projects in the Glenwood Springs area in general, or about the Middle Colorado Watershed Council?
No, I think we're good.
Great,
Thank you so
very
much.
Thank you.
I will
Appreciate
say
it.
thank you so much. I had no idea, really. I mean, had always heard it, knew Paula was involved, but didn't really have a good understanding. So thank you for that overview.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think for the future work that we're doing, I meant to say also, all of these projects that involve the city of Glenwood have some element of city of Glenwood support. Some of that's through collaboration with the River Commission. Some of our volunteers are also River Commission. One of our volunteers is also a River Commission person, so we help each other with events, I like to think. And, you know, we also receive support from the city of Glenwood, such as a recent FAB grant award. So thank you everything, you know, for everything that you guys have done to support us as well.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
All right, item number 19.
Should we get Shelley back first?
Maybe
Shelley's
Paula.
trying to get
I
out.
mean, Paula,
Sure.
Shelley or Paula.
Huh? Oh, I think they're losing.
Mr. Mayor, keep it up.
Thank you. I will as long as Terry does.
Uh-oh.
No pressure, though. By pressure, I mean.
I found her.
You have a 1 minute summary, Terry.
It's gonna be tough.
Grant opportunity? Man,
Cut me off when I'm getting too long. It's kind of long.
go ahead, Terry.
So good evening, council. There you go. Can I move forward with the grant?
Is there a motion?
That's the 15-second version. So recently we became aware of a new source of funding, a federal source of funding that has $1 billion allocated for over the next 5 years. And it's specifically for safety related projects. Fortunately, we've been working with FHWA on a pilot program. And I don't know why the rest of my graphics are not showing up here. Let me see what, oh, there they are. So we were invited to be a part of what is essentially a county process. And the county asked us to take the lead on the project, and we gratefully did. Essentially, it's an analysis. FHWA helps you gather data over a period of years, and you can look at that data and determine, you know, where safety problems exist in your community. So as I said, you know, it's a plan that that looks specifically at problem areas. It compares peer cities. Our peer cities happen to be at Aspen, Breckenridge, Frisco, Rifle, Steamboat, and Steamboat Springs. It looks at statewide data, and it gives you an indication of where your incidence of accidents of a particular type of accident are greater than what would be expected from a peer city or a state or overall the statewide. So this is a map of our crashes overall, and you can see a whole bunch of dots there, and they represent different types of accidents. And again, this is a period of 2017 to 2021. The most important things to know out of all of this data, and again, we have different maps for all types of events, pedestrians, bicycles, incidents that occurred when the canyons close. Interestingly, our accident rates go up when the canyon closes because I think driver frustration increases. But the most important thing I think out of the whole study were that we had 4 fatal crashes over the period and 22 serious incidents. Midland and Grand are obviously have the majority of the total of fatalities and severe crashes. 10.6% of crashes in Glenwood involve a pedestrian compared to statewide average of 4% and a peer city average of 8.3%. 7.5% of crashes involve a bicyclist. And again, our averages are higher than the statewide and our peer cities. You can see on Grand Avenue, we have a whole bunch of rear end crashes. They were 40% of our overall crashes compared to a statewide average of about 30% and a peer city average of about 37%. Our percentage of fatal injury collisions in Glenwood is 2.0 compared to statewide average of 1.8 and a peer city average of less than 1%. 27% of our total crashes occur at intersections, as well as 33% of the severe injury crashes occur at intersections. Obviously, transit stops and pedestrian generated destination, our schools, our hospitals are identified as the highest risk locations. Overall, we had 21 pedestrian and 15 bicycle crashes. We have talked a fair amount recently about speed on Grand Avenue. You know, I think most of us feel like people don't follow our posted speed of 25 miles an hour. And there's, somewhere in the range of, 30 to, higher, 35, 37, 38. We recently had a local resident, Robin Million, come in and ask us if we could directly ask the state if they would be willing to reduce the speed on Grand Avenue south of 27th Street. I think Ryan today sent you the CDOT's response letter, and I think he also passed out a hard copy of it. CDOT did decide that they couldn't arbitrarily reduce that speed. Their rationale is that, they do studies. I think I've explained that process to you in the past. And if they don't conform to their method of study, that they carry additional liability from the state standpoint for setting a speed that's arbitrarily low. So essentially, they refused our request based on that. So I do believe that there are ways that we can, as a community, try to reduce speeds overall and address our accident history. So one of those ways is through reducing the driver's comfort level. I like to give the example of how all of us probably drive on I-70. The spaces are wide, our ability to drive 70 or 75 out there, it feels comfortable. There aren't things that are coming into our peripheral vision that make us uncomfortable. When we get to narrowed spaces, whether, Grand Avenue is obviously one of them, Blake Avenue is one of them. The narrower the space, the more or the less comfortable you are as a driver. You're looking for things in your peripheral vision that might pop out at you, and it makes you want to be more cautious. So landscape medians are one of those ways to reduce driver comfort and reduce the overall speed of the road. Landscape medians also eliminate pedestrian and vehicle mid-block crossing movements. So I think Highway 6 is a good example of a lot of pedestrians moving at different locations, not necessarily anywhere near an intersection, and some unexpected movements. And I know you guys are aware of all of the crossing movements we have into our suicide lane on Grand Avenue. I think we've used it for years, but I do believe that with the increasing traffic, it's becoming more hazardous. The idea of medians would allow us to build pedestrian refuges and intersection bump outs to protect pedestrians and force slower vehicular movements at the intersections. So the more you can change the radius of those intersections and make it so the drivers have to approach it and go through it more slowly, the safer the pedestrians will be. We could also reduce the number of traffic signals in the downtown area. The idea behind that would be that we take some of that signal timing. CDOT is very protective of their signal timing, and move it to other signals. So have more time for crossing vehicles and more time for pedestrians to move across the corridor. I also think that reducing the number of signals would also reduce the rate of rear end crashes that we have on the corridor, just less stop and go traffic and less opportunity for distracted drivers to have to force a hard stop. With any study that we would do on the Grand Avenue corridor, I'd like to look at the bus lane idea. I think I mentioned this earlier when we were talking about transit. One of the ideas that came out of the MOVE study was a potential for bus lanes on Grand Avenue. So if we were going to evaluate the idea of medians or pedestrian refuges, I'd like to look at those bus lanes. I'd also like to look at the idea of parking as traffic calming. It's a discussion that we've had with the DDA for a long time. I'd like to look at the bus pullouts and the idea of signals that allow buses to move first. They call it a queue jump, where the bus has a green signal before the traffic does. It allows the bus to move across the lane. Another possible idea for these safety projects is a grade separation somewhere between 9th and 12th for the GSES students. I know we've been trying to encourage people in our community to walk and bike, and I do know that Grand Avenue is a very significant barrier for GSES students that are trying to move from the east side to the west side. I don't know any parents that would allow their kids to go out and hit the walk button and hope for the best. So I think that a grade separation somewhere in that range with the school's help in polling of the parents to determine the correct location would be a good idea for a safety project. So again, I think, a potential project for this large safety grant would be looking at improvements on Grand Avenue. Number of signals, timing of signals, median improvements, grade separations for Glenwood or for the elementary school. We do have some issues at Midland and 27th. The issues there involve the diameter of the internal piece of that roundabout. It was incorrectly designed some time ago. You guys who have now driven the roundabout, for instance, at the intersection of South Grand is a good one, 27th and South Grand, as well as the new one at 4 Mile. A correct design for a roundabout forces the driver to go, out and around. It slows the driver through the intersection. 27th Street really allows you to do a quick check and keep your speed right up. You fly right through that intersection. So improvements at the 27th Street roundabout, if we could get funding, we would look at widening the apron there and trying to force a wider turn and force people to go more slowly through that intersection. Additional areas where we would like to consider improvements are on West 6th Street. If you looked closely at that graphic, we did have a number of incidents between the 116 interchange Laurel all the way to Devereaux. And I do think that if we were going to consider the concept of landscaped medians, it's very similar to the phases 3 and 4 of the 6th Street corridor master plan. And we were going to widen sidewalks there. We were going to put in medians that would channelize pedestrians and force slower speeds through that area. Another place where we would like to take a look at the intersection is at Midland and West Wolfson. That was where one of our fatalities was. The speeds and the sight distance at that particular location are fast. And it's difficult to see people that are crossing there. And we do have people that come off of West Wolfson and try to cross the Midland Center, and it's dangerous. So we would like to evaluate that intersection as well. So funding for these types of projects, again, that Safe Streets for All grant, it's due in September, mid-September. It is, they have various stages of the grant. You would enter the process for a safety planning implementation and evaluate all of those types of concepts. There is a large pot of money associated with it, and they allow up to 1 million for planning grants with a 20% match. Other programs that we could look at would be highway safety improvement program, safe routes to school again for that underpass, and then RAFTA also has first and last mile funding, which is available on a yearly basis. So with that, I guess I wanted to ask the council if they were interested in continuing the process, looking at those projects. Go ahead.
Yeah, Terry, I'm particularly interested, and I appreciate what you presented here. You talked about people crossing Grand, though. It's a state highway, and I understand Monday through Friday and at rush hour and during the day. But, people wait at those lights on a Sunday morning at 7 a.m., me included. And, CDOT seems particularly unresponsive to changing the timings on those lights. They don't seem to be coordinated. And what concerns me is kids particularly, but even adults like myself who lose patience, jaywalk, and that creates safety hazards that cause car accidents and worse, pedestrian accidents. Is that something we can address too?
Yes. Yeah, I think that, I have communicated with CDOT. They are interested in this process. But I think that, I would not be interested in removing signals unless CDOT was willing to talk about moving that signal timing to remaining signals, taking out 2 of the 4 signals and taking that timing and allowing for, more time for pedestrians, maybe a faster cycle so that, you don't wait 2 minutes at the signal.
Or a faster cycle at non-peak times for cars.
Yeah. And, I always tell people that, CDOT, I've had conversations with CDOT and with the city of Aspen. City of Aspen took their signals from CDOT. I personally would never advocate for the city to take the signals on Grand Avenue. because they operate, it's impossible, I would say, to get them to work according to everybody's desires. You know, CDOT right now, I think, operates them to move traffic through town. But, you know, even with that idea, you know, we still have backups in our PM and AM peak hours. And with those backups, particularly in the afternoon, you know, we see people peel off of those lines of traffic and they go into our neighborhoods. So, you know, I often get the question or request, you know, could you take over the signals? Could you get CDOT to add more time for crossing pedestrians or crossing vehicles? And the answer is yes, they would love to give me those signals. And I will, I will fight tooth and nail not to take them.
No, but I
because-
wasn't asking that we take over. I just asking that they had, like, a person driving from Rifle to go to work in Aspen has as much right to use Highway 82 as I do. I just happen to live here. But that person probably isn't commuting when I go home tonight after this meeting, you know, so I'm just trying to get across the street. And you see people on 8th Street, scares me to death, running because the tourist gets confused with the left turn signal and they'll go, someone's gonna get killed.
Yeah,
So it's their highway.
Absolutely. You know, and I do think that it's very difficult. What I'm trying to say is that, you know, if we favor the jurisdiction on the signals and we allow more time, we allow the barn dance, you know, people have talked a lot about that. Everybody stops and all the people move. You know, it's a good idea, I think, for the local community, but what it causes is, you know, more congestion, more backups on 82. And the more we see those people have to stop and wait for us, the more they peel off into our neighborhoods. And so it becomes a community character issue. And it's a really fine, it's very difficult to operate those signals, you know, so that it's a balance between trying to get those people through town versus trying to make it so that we live in our city and we can walk across the street.
Well, let me just say, finally, I appreciate that, Terry, but they have all these, it's not like it's the old 1950s stop sign with the little thing, or even you know, they're computers. They can adjust times. They do it in Denver. They do it in Boulder. They do it in Colorado Springs. Why can't they do it on this state highway? But if it can't be done.
That's a
it
great
can't be-
question. Great question, Councilor Hershey.
Right.
Okay.
That was, you were
And we would
asking
look
me
at it.
on- Well, she asked for input on.
I think this is where you go like this to us.
Well, this is an important issue, Ms. Russo. It's not a question that was in the packet that I could have read before.
No, I
No,
think it's
but-
excellent. We will
Thank
look
you.
at it.
I have
Yes.
nothing else.
No, we're just trying to keep it to questions, answers, public, yada, yada,
Mhm.
questions.
I have one question, and it was just to clarify. Like the 27th Street roundabout, not only by widening it, would it make people have to go slower to navigate it? Would it also make it easier for heavy equipment and trucks pulling trailers? Would that concurrently happen? Because that is an issue that I hear regularly.
You know,
I think,
what we would do is widen.
sorry, just real quick, just for point of clarification, are you talking about the 27th Street in Midland or 27th Street in South Grand?
I'm talking 27th Street in South Grand.
She's
South
talk-
Grand. So
Mhm.
South Grand, I can't do anything about because we would have to own the bank. And so we've got to live with what we got there.
This would just be the.
This would just be the Midland one. Yeah.
Taking those calls.
Sorry, you can send them to me.
It's Paula's ward. She should be taking those calls. Weird. Steve's got an opinion
That's a
about
good
that.
point, but I get all the calls from over in Ingrid's ward, so it's okay. Terry, I'm a local and I know that when I hit 8th and Grand, I just walk down and go under the pedestrian bridge and cross over. Can we do some kind of signage or marketing? Get over to the other side, go under the bridge, or can we do something like that to at least move people along who are just standing there waiting? And
I think you're 100% right. I think about that like every 6 months when I happen to be standing there and I'm like, well, we should just post a sign because, you know, maybe, I think it's actually faster than the signal to walk around.
it is.
But, you know, not everybody knows that. So it's a good idea. I will put it on my list to do because I think of it every 6 months or so. Okay.
Terry, is there any way that we could have Grand Avenue land on 9th Street?
Um,
I'm joking. I'm joking.
That is
Just-
my favorite question of all
Just,
time.
just Terry advocated for that and when that, I believe that went over like a lead balloon, but we're all sitting around going, wouldn't that be amazing now?
Do you want to ask her about elevators?
Another one of my favorite questions.
Can we at least eliminate the left turn lane? Okay, now we're just having fun. But I do have a serious question. How, I mean, I'm looking at these crash maps and closure crash map, pedestrian crash map, bicycle crash map, and then crash map.
Yeah.
So I think the crash map is just general crashes. This is just completely layman, like, I don't know anything about anything, obviously, but I do not perceive 27th Street in Midland as a dangerous intersection.
You know, I think that, well, we have all this data from FHWA and we pulled specifically the ones that were fatalities and serious injuries. And I think that, you know, we do have near misses at 27th Street. I think mostly because of the terraces and, you know, the condominiums across the way, those unnamed condominiums. And I see a lot of people through there. And I think that one of the reasons that it's dangerous is because we have that steep grade down to the roundabout. And it's sometimes hard to see people there. And so I think that there is some work we can do. Now, is it the very most important thing on this list? And, you know, will we absolutely, you know, I guess I would advocate for funding on Grand Avenue, obviously, before I would do 27th Street.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen fender benders from when it gets slick, because there's pretty steep approach. People like plow into another one, but you know, I don't know if there anything could be done about that.
Not without serious dollars, you know, to regrade Midland essentially back to the.
Let's not touch Midland anymore.
Yeah, never again.
It's pretty great. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, Jonathan, actually, I think this question, what you're asking us to do is to proceed with the safety study. You're not asking us to think about getting rid of stoplights and grade or any of that stuff yet, but just to look at the study, which will then look at all these issues. Is that correct?
That's correct. I just want your blessing to move forward.
That's
It
what I
is-
thought, but they're good questions, but I mean,
That's what I got.
yeah, okay.
It's just a really large project and, you know, we will have a lot of community collaboration, you know, public outreach and discussion with partners like RAFTA and the school district and all of that stuff. So I would like the council's buy-in before we go forward.
So is there any comments from council now? Yeah, Charlie. Thank you for your discipline.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea. I think it's a great grant. I think anything we can do to improve safety in the city, and we can't reduce the number of cars going down Grand Avenue, unfortunately. So anything we can do, and you know, if we can get a grant to do that. And I understand we have an inside person in our grant program coming up real shortly, so we might be able to use that.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that she'll be advocating strongly for us.
So I make a motion that we ask the city staff to go ahead with getting the estimates and bring back a resolution in support of the grant.
A second.
Motion by Charlie, seconded by Paula. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very
Yes,
much,
thank
Jerry.
you.
I don't understand this next time.
Supplemental appropriation. Right? This is an ordinance, so I have to take public comment. But the shorter that Steve's presentation is,
A longer public.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Every quarter, we do a supplemental appropriation to put things in the budget that we didn't know about when we passed the budget in November. And that's what this is. I think we've talked about all of these, I think.
We have.
So if it's pretty simple, it's mostly the 5% raising.
any questions for Steve? Seeing none, we'll have public comment. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll close it to public comment. We'll bring it back for a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve ordinance number 17, series of 2020.
I'll second that.
Been motioned by Charlie, seconded by Ingrid. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
You got to do a voice.
Oh, because it's ordinance.
But it's unanimous.
Yeah, but it's an ordinance.
Ordinance.
All right, go.
try, Mayor.
Good man. Ryan, you want us?
Good job catching us, Ryan.
I just want some action.
Okay.
You need to vote, Tony.
I know, I was thinking.
Use my action.
Ev-
It's unanimous.
Everything unanimous tonight? That's your gift.
Still Star Trek.
Thank you, guys.
Steve, Steve, while you're up there, hey, I just want to say thank you very much for taking on the interim city manager position. You'll be doing 2 jobs for the next however many weeks, months. So thank you very much for taking it on. We appreciate it, and we'll try not to run you ragged.
Yeah.
No, no.
No. And you know,
Trust me, I will. be.
Steve, you did a pretty good job tonight presenting that, but it could have been a little bit more brief.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll keep that in mind.
Steve, you get promoted, you get to sit over here.
5,000 ain't worth nothing now. All right, we are down to report from city manager.
We forgot. Council.
I was gonna skip that.
You can skip it. You second.
Council comments. No, that was Ingrid.
Ingrid seconded, right?
Yes.
I seconded.
Yeah.
Council comments.
You seconded Ingrid, supplemental appropriation.
Yes,
I was just,
Charlie made the motion, I
I
seconded.
was gonna make more, but given it's Deborah's last meeting, almost the end of that last meeting, I'll just go through it real quickly. I saw the memo on the electric outages, and I appreciate getting that because I'm getting lots of calls on that. And I know that Bree put out thank you. Good thing of thing. But I think we also need to, and maybe I talked to Steve, we need to engage with Excel and say something.
Matt has been extensively engaging with Excel.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Yes,
Yeah,
extensive.
because people are just going crazy. Every time we go to the store, they say, what's going on? Because my computers get shut down. Christian had a big problem with it last week. So, yeah, I think we need to, anything we can do to get that. The only other thing I really will do tonight, I'll leave the rest of the next meeting, is I'd like to introduce to everyone, if you haven't already met, Cassandra Balder in the back, our new post-independent reporter. And I had the opportunity to meet with her last week, and she made me buy the beer. So, no, I want to publicly say I bought you a beer. So, and it didn't do me any good. So anyway, no, welcome. And we appreciate you being here.
I would have known that. I would have been way more professional. And the headline is beloved city manager. Just throwing that out there. I know you don't write the headlines. Oh, Ingrid.
You go first.
Okay, I don't want to go too long again myself, but at CML, I know Charlie was in it, but we were at a particularly good presentation and what was one of the big group presentations about community listening. And both of us concurred that how important that is and that we incorporate that. And one of the things that I think we might consider is when people have comments for us in the general comments that we allow council to respond, because people come in here, they're nervous, they're talking to us, they want some kind of response. And if we're all just sitting looking at them stone-faced, I don't think that's a good interaction with our community. We really need to show that we're involved. So I'd love it, just like if we could speak about this sometime, about kind of lightening up a little bit on our, I don't want to say this the wrong way, but this rule of 3 minutes and nobody say anything. And it's just really cold, I think. And that's one of the biggest things I took away from that, is more engagement with people who come to talk to us. That would be great. Okay, that was one thing. And then I want to remind people to put it on your calendars for the Riverfest on August 13th. We want you all there. And then the last thing was, I've mentioned this to a few council people, and I know I asked Deborah to pass it around, but I really would like a council discussion on what we as a group want as a city manager. I think it would be worth a discussion rather than us just waiting and throwing a bunch of questions to Jonathan to give to people when they come to interview. I feel like we should know what we all want. This is, as Carla said, one of our biggest responsibilities. And I think it would be worth a discussion. Those are my things. Go ahead, just be cold faced.
I just want to say I agree. I want to say I agree and concur 100% with both the things you said. I just, the first one about engaging, I just worry that people get passionate and then we end up asking questions and it gets to this long back and forth. So I think let's talk about it maybe at our next work session and just,
And
you know, but just like put some tight guardrails on it. But I totally agree with you.
And I think we have responded to some of them sometimes. And
Yeah,
I also
it's
have to
not
say,
consistent.
I've been to other councils up and down the valley and all of them engage when people do public comments. So something that kind of opens the door a little bit more and shows the community, we really are listening and interested.
Meetings endless.
But
Well, I
that's
think
why
it's those
parameters.
guardrails.
yeah.
Go ahead, Ingrid.
So I have two items, both kind of under the umbrella of climate change concerns. And the first is that I'm sure many of you know that we have a juniper boring beetle issue, and it's killing a lot of trees, in particular in West Glenwood. And I've had a lot of people mention that some open space areas and some easement areas, all these different areas of the, that they're dying, and they're dying rather prolifically. And I think what it does too, and people keep bringing this up to me, is that it's fuel for a future fire, and it's close to a lot of homes. I don't know if this is something we task with Parks and Rec or how we do this, but I think we need to, we need to have a dialogue.
Parks and Rec has indeed been working on this.
Great. You want to give us an update?
Yeah, so I don't remember all the details off the top of my head, but in this month's electric bills, everyone should be looking out for a pamphlet that talks exactly about that.
Okay.
Sort of, here's the issue, here's why it's important, here's what to look for, and here's what to do.
Okay.
Will be in your electric bills and will also be appearing on social media and coming through our email and text updates. But yes, it is a problem. The main takeaway that I would have for folks right now is if you're seeing signs of this Ips beetle infestation, currently, just with temperatures the way they are, if you try and cut the tree down now, it actually makes it spread more easily. So
okay,
don't cut your tree down
Yeah.
yet, but there are instructions on what to do in that pamphlet. If
Okay.
you miss it, it will be online at cogs.us/beetles.
And I would like to take it a step further and see if we have any funds that we can incentivize people for cutting them down. If they're paying some tree trimming company.
Incentivize people to cut them down?
No, I know, but at some point you need to take them down. And if you take them down per the direction, I just worry that they'll just stay dead in people's backyards and it's gonna be fuel for the fire. So maybe more than anything is I'd like to continue a discussion about how we can remediate some of these so that we don't have the fuel just ready to go. That's one. And the other one is I would also like to see if everyone is receptive to a dialogue about funding sod removal. I think we need to be proactive about it. And I think that there are a lot of people in the community that are very, very inclined to do it, but sod is very difficult to remove yourself. It's much easier to pull some bindweed up, which I have plenty of that too. And so if we could figure out a way to either contract with someone or, once again, fund some offset, something so that we could start proactively getting rid of some of these lawns. Because I don't think people even want them that much. It's just there. It's hard to get rid of. So
Just to double up on that, the state of Colorado actually gives you a certain amount per square foot if you do it right now. So.
that's in a future electric bill notice. And then maybe we can also talk about having a little credit so that people could maybe get some money back.
And I would think that we pushed the discussion we were gonna kind of have around that because of the Affordable Ad Hoc Committee when it got
Yeah.
reassigned,
Mhm.
but I think it is still on the table, right?
Great.
We haven't forgotten about it.
I'm just gonna keep on talking about it until we
Absolutely.
actually do something. So thanks.
That's Deborah saying, not my problem.
Exactly.
Uh,
That is totally what she was doing.
But Ingrid, I agree with you. And I think we as a city need to take the lead on that. Just walking, I spent a lot of time in Two Rivers and there's what do they call it? Non-productive turf or help me out somebody, non-useful turf, like just stuff that's on the edges. Like I'm looking out here and I don't know, can half of that stuff be not Kentucky bluegrass? And maybe it's not even ours, but I think, well, we could pass an ordinance.
Wouldn't apply to that.
Okay.
Just, you're taking away the fun of having.
Yeah,
It's just kind of like.
That-
Oh,
I.
Okay, and with that.
But I do think we need to lead on that. I think we need to do it in our parks. We need to turn everything that is not useful turf into native grasses and plants. So I think the first thing I want to do is lead by example and then throw some money at the problem. So I agree with that part too. Sure. All right, any other council comments? All right, seeing none, city manager report.
Okay, the police chief was asked to update you guys real quick on security downtown.
The private security?
Right.
Send it up.
Right. Good evening. So this is real brief. I don't have anything prepared for you. I just want to have like, or put in your minds, remind you that the city's spending north of 6 figures for private security services in the downtown core area. We don't know that that's the best practice, considering what we're getting on a return on our investment. And then just in about the last 12 to 18 months, we've had almost 0 calls for service based on or generated by that security service. We do appreciate that there's a presence there, but I just don't know. I question the effectiveness of having that. That's certainly a policy decision. That's certainly left up to you guys, and we'll execute it in any fashion that you desire. But I want to bring it to your attention that although they are down there and we're spending these funds, a lot of times, and I think this is probably something that we could work out with the company themselves, but just the general effectiveness of having them down there is really questionable at this point. Particularly at this time of year, maybe, and I could see where that might be useful and more symbolic than anything else. But outside and it's really expanded, that program's really expanded over the last several months to a larger part of the year. And so I just want to bring that to your attention, make you aware of kind of where we're at. Oftentimes they have just people there, but I just don't know that they're skilled or the right people or in the position to do what we're asking them to do.
Chief Darris, do you have I mean, we've gotten better with like limiting the number of vacancies we have in your department. Do you have more staff that could help? I want to say pick up the slack, but instead of, I don't know, sure.
Well, what I recently did in the last week is we're going to start posting overtime for officers that want to work down there on bicycles, particularly in the summertime. Just have a little bit more, and not just necessarily their focus down there, but sometimes, pass through the parks so people see them. We have been criticized recently by one particular community member about why do you have all these cops on bikes, and so we try to do what we can. We just can't make everybody happy, right?
Yeah.
So, yes, the short answer is yes. That's certainly an option, Mayor.
Good, Tony.
Deborah, was I a mistake? Was it just weekends and just summer, or we were doing it? What was the time frame that we approved? I know Steve Davis was a big supporter of this initially.
I think Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday from like 4 to 10, I believe was maybe the original. And it's floated around here and there.
Because Mr. Mayor, I do like the idea of some presence down there.
So
I think it's good, but
Chief Darris,
maybe limit it.
if you were, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm jumping in here, I guess, a little bit, but if you're able to commit a little bit more presence to it, I wouldn't personally see the need to continue the contract.
I would like Chief Darris, if you don't mind, to just bring some solutions to us on how you would approach it and what would be the best way.
Certainly. And typically that I wouldn't come to you with, I'm not bringing a problem to you. I'm making,
Right.
It's highlighting an issue without bringing solutions forward, always.
Okay.
I didn't have anything prepared, like I said, but I'm happy to do that. And I do think that they should be relatively workable. But again, just making you mindful of why we're
Yeah.
addressing the situation now.
I think that'd be great. That way we,
Appreciate bringing it to our
Yeah, and I'm not trying to be critical of the direction that you've given. I think it was valuable at the time, but now I think we're just in a different place and really looking at the effectiveness or lack thereof. We might want to have another discussion about that.
that'd be great.
Come back and just give us an idea.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'd love to transition those funds that we're spending on that to speed enforcement. Because didn't you come when I think he came 1 week when I was gone, right?
Right.
And asked for a position, and what was the status on that?
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. I was saying that I do have a vision that we would assign a person permanently to a
Yeah.
traffic enforcement position.
Sure.
And that's through the budget process. And that
Yeah.
was part of a larger conversation, but
Yeah.
That has been.
If
so-
we're
so-
saving money on this, it's a segue. So thank you.
Thank you.
I think you and I'll spend a lot of time together if you're that person. Starsky and Hutch.
Yeah.
It'd be a buddy comedy.
Just me and not with you, Chief. I was thinking.
Amos and Andy?
Abbott and Costello?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm good. I think I've said enough tonight. Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
so much.
Thanks, Deborah.
Speaking of the empty chair next to me, Dead meat. I just wanted to give you a quick update. Position is open until the 15th of July for the replacement. We've gotten, I think, 8 or 9 applications is what the recruiter is saying, and a handful of those are qualified. So that's kind of where we're at in that recruitment process. We'll update you with more information probably on the 21st after it's closed, and maybe we've had an initial chance to kind of go through those applications. I think that was it. I can't remember if I had something else that I was supposed to be doing for you guys.
Nope. Correspondence, I did get a correspondence. This is from Debbie and Mike Lee from Ames, Iowa. Mayor and City Council of Glenwood Springs, I'm ready to express our appreciation for the generous hospitality of your community and to compliment your community resilience through the many challenges you have come your way the past few years. We've been visiting your community via Amtrak since fall 2015. We have been fortunate to be able to come a couple times a year, almost every year. We have observed the vision and the investments you have made in the downtown area, the pool area, and the surrounding area is so inviting. We are so grateful to be able to visit and enjoy the many amenities. We recognize the challenges that the fire, landslides, and pandemics have brought to your community. We are impressed by the creativity and adjustments that have been made to meet these challenges. We have always been met with Okay. Sorry. We have always been met with welcoming and positive attitudes. We hope that the coming years will go more smoothly. We look forward to continued opportunities to enjoy the fruits of your efforts to provide a vibrant, strong community for locals and visitors. Sincerely, Mike and Debbie Lee of Ames, Iowa.
Hey, I have
No,
one quick
Isn't that
thing.
nice to hear though, guys?
Hey, I requested that Deborah and staff prepare a thank you letter for the Rocky Mountaineer leadership team on our behalf. Just thanking them so much for all of the efforts to just remedy the issues with the community. So.
And I will respond. Thank you for that. And I'll respond to this one as well. Because they're from Iowa.
Mr. Mayor, I believe you wanted to ask about the Unida Basin issue?
I did, yes. We had taken a vote 6 months ago to write a letter of support to our congressional delegation requesting that they look into this, and we are being asked again to write another letter of support. So I just wanted to get a head nod if we're good with reaffirming that decision, writing another letter.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. All right.
Move to adjourn.
Now, executive session.
I thought that would be part of the regular session.
Okay. Yeah, just for executive session. Do you want to adjourn before?
No, just you can make a motion. In the motion, go into executive session. At the end of it, just say, and at the end of the executive session.
I thought we had to take some action.
Why does it say second?
Stop asking questions.
One earlier and one later.
There's 2 executive sessions.
Can somebody please make a motion?
Carl, I thought we had to take.
Don't you have to start?
I thought you had taken action now.
No, we do not.
I don't think we do.
Okay.
You don't need to read this right now.
I don't think, we're not in a position to be able to.
Tony,
actually
read it.
diagnose.
Just start reading. Put your mic on. Yeah. Casey's if we get out of here in the next 5 minutes.
Okay. Christian. Mr. Mayor, I have moved to go into an executive session pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 24-64024B and E for the purpose of a conference with the city attorney to receive legal advice on specific legal issues and to determine positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators specifically related to Mind Springs Health and the countywide IGA for detox services. I also move Mr. Mayor, to adjourn at the end of this executive session. Thank you, Carl.
Been moved by Council Hershey, second by Councilor Dane. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's July 7th, 2022. The time is 8:13. For the record, I'm presiding officer Mayor Jonathan Good, as required by the open meetings law. This executive session to be electronically recorded. Also present in this executive session, the present following persons: Mayor Pro Tem Charlie Wilman, Councilors Ingrid Wusa, Paula Stepp, Tony Hershey, Mark Dame, City Manager Deborah Figueroa, City Attorney Carl Hanlon, and Chief Harris. This is an executive session pursuant to CRS 246402-4B and E for the purpose of conference with the city attorney to receive legal advice on specific legal issues and determines positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategies for negotiations and instructing negotiators specifically related to the Mine Springs Health and the countywide IGA for detox services. Let's start the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is